Hello, everyone. Myself, Divyang. Welcome to Programmers Week 2021 and Cognizant Soft Visit. So today, I'm planning to discuss the robust cloud architecture framework. So what is that? So let's start that. I hope you will enjoy that. So cloud computing is not a new concept. It started around the 1950s and on a mainframe computer. But the modern cloud computing that we use today or we are familiar with, that started around the mid 2000, and that is due to the advancement in the virtualization and SDN, that is called the software defined networks. So such technology makes the cloud computing more advanced and feasible. And besides that, use of, advancement of big data and usage of 4G mobile network and advancement of AI/ML. So such things will actually accelerated the cloud adoptions. And now we are in a cloud age. So in that landscape, if you see in the last 10, 15 years, cloud has changed tremendously. It offers so many kind of service models like infrastructure as a services, platform as a services, software as a services, function as a services, database as a services, container as a services, backup as a services, anything as a services they are offering. And for that, a lot of public clouds came, and you know that AWS is the first mover in this space. So the nowadays, like Azure, that's come from Microsoft, Google Cloud, IBM Clouds, AWS, obviously, those are the famous public clouds. But then a lot of big enterprises also develop their own private cloud with the help of VMwares and such virtualization technology. Now, they also want to take the benefit of the public cloud. So new concepts arrive that is called hybrid cloud. People don't want to align with the one, or they don't want to lock down with the any particular cloud. So people are started using the multi-cloud strategies. There are certain community clouds are coming in nowadays, which is dedicated for specific like health related domains. There were some specific clouds are available. So many such things are evolving, and this clouds landscape is changing continuously. And changes and new offers are coming like uh, it's blow your mind. So to keep up with that stuff, we need to make our architecture or our workload that we put it on cloud that should be agile enough, and that should be uh, good enough to keep up with those things. At the same time, it will achieve our business goal. So we need to design our architecture, which could be robust, and it should be strong enough and it should adhere the and take the advantages of all the cloud things that comes uh, right now and in coming in future. So how to identify that our cloud architecture is robust and it is uh, good enough to get our business values. So there are the 5 pillars of robust cloud architecture, which is called the CORS. So these are the 5 pillars, or you can say 5 benchmark or 5 assessment area through which you can identify and you can scale out your architecture, and you can find out how good it is, how efficient it is to utilize the cloud benefits and generate the business value for you. So the first one is the cloud. There is no such orders that we need to follow, but it's just to make it out of proper acronyms. I'm just following the this order. So one is a cost management, operational excellence, reliability, performance efficiency, and a security. So these are the 5 pillars, or you can say 5 aspects that you have to uh, use to benchmark and validate your cloud architecture to find out how good it is. So let's start with the cost management. Now, cost management is a key factor, to make it out to generate the business value from your workload that you run on your cloud. maybe a public application, or maybe your internal applications, whatever. So if cost, if you can optimize the cost, because since it gives the virtually enormous kind of resources, okay, endless resources, or you can say infinite resources. So if your design inefficient system, your architecture is not designed appropriately, then it might take the advantage of the cloud, which is the elasticity, into increasing the cost, and that ruins your all the business values and your applications uh, objectives. So let's go to the cost management. So there are these six uh, things that you can do, or you can validate against your application, cloud workload, to identify how good it is, and how to do the cost management in your cloud workload. So first of all, when you start your designing your application, you always keep the cost in mind. Why you want to move to the cloud? Because cloud, when you move from your on-premises to cloud, it gives the it goes from capex to opex, but at the same time it offers the elasticity and abundant resources. So you may end up with the lot of cost. So which resource you have to select, which workload you have to migrate, and in your cloud, which workload you want to keep it in on premises. Those you need to identify, and based on that you have to make the design. Now when you're starting the cost management, the first thing you need is cost accountability. Because if your financial team, or the finance team, and your IT team of that workload or the project that you're running on cloud, if they are disconnected, you never know the cost is when the cost is going out of your reach. Okay, so you need to identify the people, like product owners, and you have to make them enable to monitor and validate and budgeting the your costing. So those stakeholders, first of all, we have to identify, and then we do start doing the budgeting. Now budgeting has like when you're making your workload, you have various environments like production environment, non-production environment, UAT environment. So you don't need the you allocate the budget based on your environment. For certain resources or for certain services, you just do the budgeting, and that budgeting you should monitor it, because that will help you to optimize and identify the where your cost is going, and while you're running the feature, adding the new features, how much is going to cost you. Then for that we need to utilize the various billings and tools are available, so that we need to utilize it. So there are third-party tools are available. Clouds also provide their own tools that we can utilize for the budgeting and all this stuff. Then we have to do the trade-off. Okay, now when you're if you're going the migrating your workload from on-premise to cloud, you may have your existing resource. I mean, what to do with the on-premise resource? You might have a lot of licenses. So how should we abandon those licenses, or we have to we have to take the managed resource on the cloud, or should we run the existing on-premises, or we can make it out a half workload on the on a cloud side and half workload on the on-premises. So we have to do the trade-off analysis. In that, let's say you have an application where you are putting your web application on cloud, and you're keeping the data server, which might be your legacy database, or something like DB2, or like mainframe database, or something that you are keeping on the on your on-premises. Now, in that case, you have to create the connections between the between your on-premises and cloud network. So that needs a secure connections, like through VPN or direct connect and all those things. So how much it's going to cost? So is it good that we can keep it here, and how much cost is going to incur? So those things we need to trade off, because that will be makes a lot of differences in your OpEx, because cloud is all about the OpEx. Okay. Then there is the trade-off between the managed resource and unmanaged resource. Uh, Clouds offer so many managed resource and unmanaged, like infrastructure as a service. When they offer, you can put your own VM. Then you have to manage your patching and updating, and you need to have a separate team, or your existing team has to dedicate their times to do all the management, like maintenance, patching, and all this stuff. If you're going to go for the manager resource, a lot of tasks is uploaded the to the cloud, and then you, in that benefit, you will get your IT team free to do some more creative work. So do we have those team, or do we have a such needs? Based on that, we have to identify, and we have to we have to select the managed or unmanaged resources. Because certain resource, if you are doing the lift and shift migrations, then we have to utilize more unmanaged resource rather than the managed resource. Like in a database, we can, I mean, if you go in a different cloud, they offer the managed database, or they offer the VMs for the various database. In that case, we have to, if we are managing the database by our own, we have to still do the patching, backup strategies, everything we have to manage. If we go by managed databases, then backup strategies, patching, and everything will be taken care by them. So those things we have to see, and based on that, we have to make the decisions. Now, third thing is that utilizing the cloud offering. So various clouds offer the various, they offer various business model, and the services, like in case of VMs, they offer the sport instances, but they have a certain disadvantages, like they cannot run for longer time. They can taken away if there is a demand in there. Similar spot instance in GCP calls the preemptible instances. So those are instances we can utilize in a batch processing, because batch processing, we can rerun those stuff, and it's not that critical if this go down. So that way we can minimize the cost. Similarly, if we have a proper business plan and we have a visibility, we can go with the reserve instance and committed user discount, and we incorporate those stuff in our DevOps pipeline. So that way we can save the cost of the things. Similarly, we can identify the proper data storage, like whether we want to go with the hot data storage and blob, or cold storage like Glacier and all this stuff. Similarly, in different cloud, they have a different names and different SKU to have a data storage. But every data storage has a different costing model, because some offer, if they are passive or cold data like Glacier, or so there you have a cheaper cost for storing, but excess cost is it will incur some accessing cost. Well, as a hot data, maybe you can do a lot of access, but read write, but you can storing is a little bit costlier. So you have to identify which kind of data you need to put it for archives and all this thing. Based on that, you can select the exact resource type and resource things to minimize the cost. Similarly, for network design, when you are designing a network, you have to identify how your data is going to flow, because in a certain, like if data is going outside the network, or ingress or outgress traffic at certain endpoints like VPN, or at public facing subnet, or VPC or VNet, it will cost. So how you make the your design, that makes a difference. For example, let's say you are using the managed database in any cloud, and in your private network, virtual private network, I mean VPC or VNet in cloud. If you have an application and that's connecting to those those managed database. Now, if it is connecting to the public endpoints, then it will cost more, because your traffic is going from it's going out in the internet, and then it's coming to your database connecting. So that will increase the cost. So you have to utilize the private endpoints, such facilities. Similarly, I mean, if you have isolated VPCs and such thing, then you have to make sure that your traffic is well organized and well directed to minimize the cost without affecting the performance and reliability. So those things we need to make sure while we design our infra in our cloud. Now the fourth thing is that capturing the details. In clouds they offer the tagging kind of features to do to get the granular billing, because to have a granular billing is very important to analyze by all the stakeholders to see that which part is taking incurring the more cost, and how to improve on those design, or how to map with the business objective those costs. And furthermore, we have to define the policies for resource provisioning. Let's say if you provision very high performance or high memory CPU, or high count of CPU VMs, then it costs you more. So we can define such policies, like in certain environments like production, we can have a certain kind of VMs, which is like high performance VMs, whereas in lower environment or development environment, we keep the smaller VM. So that way we can minimize the cost. And like we don't use the certain SKU levels like in our lower environment. So that also will save your cost. So that policy should be in place at the first, and it should be updated continuously, so that you can manage the cost. Now, next thing is the establish the DevOps and the feedback loops. Now, since your workload management is more automated, we have to set a DevOps to monitor the cost. We have to find out what is the residual value, what is the peak value, what is the usage patterns, and that should generate the proper feedback. And based on that, we should improve our solution, and we can introduce the more better solution, and we can bring those changes. Because so that's why DevOps strategies and that feedback loop should be there, and it should brings the continuous changes to improvise the cost. But at the same time, we have to do the trade-off with the other pillars, because just to minimize the cost, we cannot affect the reliability or performance or security. So for that, we have to trade off, like certain in certain environment, we may not need certain resource or certain services, so that we can or we can go the lower level. Like we don't need a higher availability or disaster recovery for lower environment. So those kind of, or we don't need a backup for the test environment data, or maybe a dev environment data. So those things we can avoid it, and we can save the storage costs and other VMs or other resources that we are consuming. So that trade-off we have to do it, and we have to identify that without affecting the reliability, performance, security, we minimize the cost. So that's very important, and that DevOps will help to make it out. Your DevOps strategy will help you out for that. Now, another very important thing that is the designing the mechanism to forecast the consumptions, and the those consumptions we can correlate with the business KPI, because if we can forecast the consumption, that will helpful to increase our quotas and everything in a system, and we can go with the better. We can achieve better business objectives. Like what if we know that this much going to be consumption for next week or next month, how much quota we need. If like say certain events are coming, or certain like in e-commerce, normally they give the Black Friday or such events, so we need more resources, so we can plan before the hand, and we can make it better business value out of that. So we always have to have those forecast mechanism and their relation with the business KPI. So that's the this is the procedure to validate and to adhere do the cost management in your architecture. So while you do benchmarking your architecture with the cost optimization or cost management, you see this those features and see how much you follow and what kind of improvements you needed in your your architecture, which makes it more robust. Now, let's go for the operation excellence. So operation excellence is about the running your cloud application, your workload, how effectively and how you can bring the continuous improvement in your workload or your application. So that's about the operational excellence. So that makes your that's very key factor in terms of user retentions and user experience to give the better feature and to avoid the any kind of to handle the any problem before the hand, or tend to learn from the your past mistakes and past incidents. So this operation excellence is very important. So let's go for it. So for operation excellence, we have to know. I mean, that's a key factor for your success, your project success, or your application success. So when you're designing your cloud architect, you have to keep the failure means you expect that failure is going to be happen. So failure should be anticipated, and your design should be based on that. So when you're designing your architecture, we have to mitigate a single point of failure, because when you are designing a distributed system, there are chances that there is a single point of failure. So to mitigate that, we have to utilize the various strategies and in your design patterns to deal with those single point of failure. That is called SPOF. Besides that, no, there are chances that you have a cloud outage. So in that case, you have to define the procedure for your disaster recovery, maybe utilizing your on-premises or utilizing the two different cloud, or you putting the your resources. I mean, your putting your backup in a different region of the same cloud. So that depends on the requirement of business or an availability of the getting the multi-cloud or on-premises or sincere cloud. So that we have to define those procedures, and we have to design our workload in that fashion only. And those disaster recovery, we must have to validate it periodically, because we are bringing continuous change, small changes. So it may happen that our disaster recovery may not work properly when such incidents happen. So you have to test it periodically. Otherwise, this will not help. So this is the very important stuff. Similarly, we have to utilize the various features available, like or our design should be in a way that like we distribute our resources in a multiple zone in a region, because many clouds, like all the major clouds, are divided in regions, and the regions are divided in a availability zone, or they can call sometimes zone. So our design should be in a way that it should be multi zonal or multi-region, depending on our requirement or on our business needs. Because if one zone is fail, in one region, other zone is working, so we can utilize those stuff. Similarly, like in Azure, there are availability sets are available. So when they make sure that in a same data center, there are different tracks. So one track, if they are updating or it's going failure, the other is not going to, it's running. So those kind of features are available, and different clouds offering different such services and features to to get the more high availability. So we should take those advantages, and our architecture should be agile enough to handle those. To leverage those facilities. Then we should have to have our operations things. So every operations should be defined as a code. So because the thing is that we want to make the things automated, more agile, faster. So our uh, uh, operation things should be considered as a code, and we have to define as a code, because to match the business agility in our code, we need to have an operation as a code. So this is the rule, or you can say this is a strategy that we can use to identify the repeatable task and convert into the automation. With that, we can put it in an automation, like releasing, most as a developer or as a DevOps team, you are making a lot of changes, and small changes, continuous changes. So those changes, indication to validate it, to validation, testing, those things should be automated, and that will help you to bring your all the changes or roll back quite much faster, and it will decrease your no downtime, or your failure time, your downtime or failure time of your application. Besides that, we also have to write our infra as a code, which is like provisioning various resources on in our cloud. Because if you want to migrate, or you want to do disaster recovery, your infra provisioning should be happen so quick. So you should write it down your infra as a code through the tools like Terraform, or even your configuration management, and all these things should be managed with the such automation tool. Besides that, our release pipeline that we normally design, those should be gated automation. Those should be automated, which should be gated automation. Gated automation is like when you're going in a higher environment, like release thing, we should have people who are accountable or responsible to move it from one environment to another environment. So there should be certain approvals are needed, or some checklist needs to be verified based before it moves to from one environment to another environment. Your changes or to do rollback. So those things should be applied, and we should have a proper automated process, like when we do the blue-green releasing strategy, to minimize the downtime or to avoid any disturbance while we're releasing the new features. And we can utilize the canary test to do the actual live testing, and real-time testing. So those strategies and things should be applied to make it out your operation much better, and your architecture should adhere those things to deliver your all the features quickly, and overcome the any failures or any uh, negative things, or you can say any uh, downtime. So that is very important. Another thing is that when we do in operation, we have to monitor. So to monitor, what we have to monitor. So to monitor the our workload, we have to identify the business objectives. Like if you're defining any food delivery application, so there are two kind of business objectives that we need to identify. Like say certain application, how much what is the delivery time, uh, uh, for average delivery time, or for the business people, or you can say business operation people. For DevOps people, we can identify how much failures happening in while booking the order due to the system failure or anything. So those are the various object metrics we have to identify, and we have to utilize the cloud monitoring tools, or any third-party monitoring tools to see those metrics, and define those metrics. Based on that metrics, your application should be good enough to get those metrics as well. So when you're designing such your application, you should incorporate such details. It will be uh, uh, make it enable to get it from the your workload. And we should define I mean, based on those metrics, we can define various alert, because we identify that certain threshold that okay, certain application is failing or your API is failing for. I mean, you should know what is the threshold, and you can identify those threshold, and based on that, you can raise the alert, or you can run the your automated healing process. So those things will makes the things more reliable, and makes the running all the time, and that help you to achieve your business goal. So that is very important. You can also utilize the AI ops. AI ops is like utilizing the artificial intelligence in operation. So those things will help you out to find out the any anomaly or any certain patterns in your workload and in your usage patterns, and to identify any kind of fraud if in happening in like financial things, or uh, any typical point of failures, which will help you to design or improve your existing application, or you can write it down the auto healing thing. So you can incorporate those AI ops, which is very critical. So in general, operations is all about the. It's not just about the doing during the execution time, but it's also we have to consider in your designing time, and we have to make sure that it should be continuously validated, and based on the feedback we can bring the improvement on it. So we should incorporate, or we have to develop such tools that might be provide that, or you can utilize your clouds their own tools or dashboard to uh, find out your operational excellence, and you can always check those your business objectives and things to see the how good your systems are running, and your how good your it's matching your operations. So now we move to reliability. Reliability is about the your application that withstand with the any failure, maybe in a failure in the cloud, inside the cloud, or maybe some outage, or maybe some application bug. So it should withstand, and it should work correctly and consistently. That is all about the reliability. So let's see that what is the I mean, how to validate the, and how to identify how robust our architecture in terms of reliability. So reliability has a two aspect. One is that we have to incorporate reliability during the design time, and we have to do the fault management, and those feedback we should give it to the DevOps team to improve the your architecture design. So the first thing in a design architecture, we should uh, incorporate the our design more in a you can say distributed manner. So it should be more segmented, like when you have a front end, your front end to back end, between the front end and back end, we should utilize some kind of load balancers and all, so that you can even your certain back end services go out of services, you can still offer the your system still to keep running. So your workload should be in a segmented manner, or you can design your system with the auto recovery for resiliency. So there are chances that there are certain workload on database or some backend. So maybe your request may be rejected, or maybe or maybe fail. So you should have some logic, or your proper algorithm to retry it, to do the auto recovery things. So those are the part of your in your while you are making your design for application. And also we should have a disaster recovery. things, because reliability is like when the system goes down, we should have our disaster recovery plan in place, and they should be well tested, so that in such outage we can still make it things available. We can route it, like in case of our I mean, like in certain cloud, let's say your region is going down, so you can redirect your workload or your requests or your user to the different regions, and you can start offering the service from that region only. Or maybe you can utilize whatever the disaster recovery plan you have in place. So you have a continuous delivery without any outage, or I mean, with the minimum outage. You can make it things. You can give the good experience to your end user. Now, when we do the operation part, how to do the reliability. So to do the reliability in operation part, we have to establish the fault management. So the fault management, we can first of all, we have to set what is the reliability goals are there. So reliability goals are like defined as KPI. We have to set it basically. So we can cite the we do the SLO, SLI. Those are the terms that is made famous by Google, which is means that they call it site reliability engineering, or sometimes it's called the DevOps strategy. So that will help you to identify how much service. I mean, how much is going to cost you if you don't match the certain availability time or uptime of your application. And based on that, you can identify what are the objectives, or what are the indicators of your application that you have to monitor, and you how to respond to those threshold to make it things reliable, and how to improve your system so it will match those threshold, or it will remain within those boundaries of indicators that is defined. Similarly, we should define the error. We have to do the error budgeting. So we cannot say that application is always available, or your workload is, or your software is, your cloud service is always available. So you should always do the error budgeting. So error budgeting is like how much mean time to recover those stuff, and those parameters we have to define it. And based on that, we have to do your release planning, and our auto recovery or disaster recovery system, and that should be matched with it. Let's say in case of outage, how much your system is going to down, so that you can define it. Then we should do the test resiliency in our sorry. So we should do the test resiliency through the chaos engineering. So chaos engineering is a methodology to introduce the failure in a properly step manner to identify how our application or our workload withstand with those failures, and that will help you to improve your system, and you can define your SLA values. So that is very critical stuff. So overall reliability is about the how good your system will correctly work, and it will withstand in case of failures or outage. Now we go with the performance efficiency. So performance efficiency is about your application, how good perform. If your application's performance are not good, then there's a bad user experience. So you always also make sure that it will match the well-defined performance indicators. So how to do it? Let's go with that. So to make it out the performance efficiency, your design should be support the horizontal auto scaling. So your system has to be defined in a way that it will be you can do the horizontal scaling, because that will help to take the advantage of the your cloud elasticity. Then we have to make the right selection of the resources, to select the right size of resources and right type of resources. Let's say if you are selecting a VMs, if you have a workload which is like more ML things, or where you may leverage the benefit of TPU, GPU kind of processors, processors available. So you can take those VMs, or so those managed resource configuration, where you can take those things and you can make your thing faster. So selecting the right size and right type of resource is very important. So you have to understand your application, your code, and based on that, you have to make the selection of your resources. Then we have to utilize various design patterns, like your data partition. So there are horizontal and vertical data partitioning, sharding we have to do, so that it will make sure that you have a faster data retrieval and read write features. Besides that, you can utilize the clouds services like caching, CDN, to deliver your content faster and gives you better user experience, and to make the things more user friendly and more fluid. Then you can utilize the event driven pattern like asynchronous kind of patterns, and many other such patterns are available, that we can see that what patterns makes your system resilient. At the same time, it will give the better performance, and you can leverage the benefit of the cloud scale. So those patterns we need to utilize. Now to verify that whatever that we have designed it, whether it matches our needs, that is our, so we have to identify how much load we are planning or we are expecting, and what kind of failures we can see. So based on that, we have to define and design our load test and stress test on our application, and we have to run it on continuous on a periodical basis, those tests, and we have to validate things. And if we based on that test, we can improvise our architecture. So the performance test is on every release, on every small release, is very important, so that we have to keep running, and we and use those results to define and improve your architecture's robustness. Now besides that, we have to do the monitoring. So in monitoring your whole workload, your application, we have to collect a lot of logs and traceabilities, and based on that, we have to define various metrics to see that the peak value, and we can do auto provisioning and auto decommissioning things, so that will save your cost. At the same time, it will not giving the bad user experience overall in a system. So those things should be automated, and it should be continuously monitor and observed it. And here also we can utilize the AI ops to improve your performance efficiency. So this is the very important things, because if your services are running but it's not giving it's slow, it's running slow, or it's getting the failures and such things, then it gives a bad user experience, and you lose the business values. So this thing we have to validate it, and we have to keep the eye on it in your application. Now this last one, that is the security. The security and privacy. These are the uttermost factor, and your end user or enterprise, everyone is concerned about it. So we have to incorporate, and I think it is the uppermost things that we have to take care of it, and we have to validate it. And it should be highly robust, and it should be well benchmarked against those security design patterns and security aspect. So in security, we have to analyze, and we have to divide our strategy in a 3 parts. The first is the access management. So in access management, we can go with the positive security models. So what is a positive security model and negative security model? So normally when you find that someone has get more access, or any resource or any application or any user, we do blacklisting. Or if we have any password or anything is compromised, we do the blacklisting. So that we should not utilize the blacklisting as our first step. we always start with the design with the least privilege access, because that's called the positive security. So we don't need to bother. Or we have a less risk to go with the any kind of exposure or any security breach. We should also utilize a just-in-time access and just enough access for temporary user. So let's say sometime you need to provide the access for certain user for certain days or certain hours. So you can utilize those features are available in access management system that is available in Azure, the Azure AD, or you can say IAM system of AWS or Google or any other clouds that they're providing. So we can utilize those just-in-time access. At the same time, we have to give the just enough access for temporary users. So those users are we can define the temporary role, and they should be deleted automatically after time is gone. So those strategies we need to incorporate in your when you're giving the access to temporarily certain user or certain stakeholders based on the needs, because that will makes the thing more safer rather than going with the negative security model where you add the user and after some time you find it, okay, why this user or that system or that service principal needs access, so you blacklist them. Those things should not be utilized. I mean, this is not the right way to do it. Moreover, then we should try with the modern methodology for authentication, which is called a passwordless or multi-factor authentication, because that will makes the things more safer, because there are various multi-factor authentication, conditional based authentication. Let's say if you use a login or authenticating from certain networks or from certain region, then only he can access this. So those kind of conditional access, multi-factor authentications, those feature needs should be incorporated and make the things more secure. So that way, if you make it out your services and access things, whatever the system you have, that makes the things more safer and robust to for any against any security breach. Now, when we go for the application and data security, so of course, when you're designing your application, or your data pipeline or your data storage, we have to make sure that security is utmost, security and privacy, because this is a two concern, and that will any breach might lead to a lot of loss to our brand value, as well as the same revenue as well. So this is very important. So the first thing, we have to make sure that our data has to be encrypted during the transit and at rest. So even when data communicating from one service to another service, we should try to use the encrypted connections based on the SSL or TSP. We have to utilize the strong enough the certificates to do the encryptions, and we can utilize the HTTPS kind of protocols, so that there is a no breach. And so if it is exposing to internet or internet facing workload, then we have to make sure that every connections are secure, and it should have enough encryptions, strong encryptions are in place. Then we have to design our application with the proper traceability, because that will help you to find out any security breach or any theft that happened, and we can report it, and we can improve our application for any security breach, and we can make this system more robust for the data privacy and data security. Besides that, when we should follow all the normal standard practice for the application design, which should withstand with all the SQL injections, cross-site scripting, and such attacks that happen on application level. So our application should be good enough to handle those problems and those kind of attacks. Okay. Then we should also follow the data security. So data security and data privacy are two different things. So data privacy is about the getting exposed intentionally or unintentionally by our application for any private information that we have for those users, and that might lead to some legal issues as well. So we have to make sure that we added all the data privacy design patterns or guidelines, and we have to make sure that our application will always compliance with those things. So we can do all the compliance our infrastructure, that because clouds offer those compliance things, so we can utilize those stuff as well, and we also follow those guidelines. Then we have, for very sensitive data, we should use the very strong encryption mechanism. So those are available, called the Cloud HSM, that is the Cloud Hardware Security Modules, which will make sure that it will always you don't lose don't lose any private key, and it will be more safer and one of the safest mechanism to encrypt the data, decrypt the data. So this is how you should design and your application and data storage and data flow. And besides that, the last thing, and that's very important, that is a network and infra security, because the, security breach can happen within the insider as well, and maybe there is some vulnerability in the any virtualized resource that we have available in that as a SDN, that is called network or any VM. So we have to make sure that we apply the security at all level, and we should also apply the appropriate defending tool or defending services for any application which is any internet facing application for DDoS kind of attack, because that will bring down your applications, or you can makes the outage in your application. And we should also define our governance models to mitigate any insider data theft, because there are chances that certain users might left and their passwords are not reset, or those access are available from not from outside our decided network or trusted network. So those things we should cover in our governance model, and we should make sure that when anyone's getting how to get the rights, how to get the access, and those things should be monitored, and how to monitor and how to given the rights and all this thing, we have to design a governance model, because that will help to mitigate the data thief. Then we have to implement the zero trust model when you're designing your network and infrastructure, because that way it will be more robust, and you have a small attack surface by any outsider or even anyone insider one. So we have to always follow the zero trust model. Then we have to utilize the AI ops kind of tool, or we have to design a tools which will do these regular scanning of vulnerability of application code or applications, and or even the VMs images or those things to identify any vulnerability in a runtime or application code or application itself or network or even infra to find it out, and before it will be exploited, we can fix it out. And we should have a mechanism to do the regular auditing. So our code, our infrastructure, our workload should have enough auditing logs should be available, and that should be monitor and find out any security breach, and we should respond to that. So we should have those mechanisms. So if we follow this three aspects of security, and we can validate against how robust our architecture against those security principle or security design, then we can say that this is this benchmark of our architecture's the security. So these are the features. Now this all the public cloud.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We are into the last 2 minutes, so we might need some time.
Yeah, I'm ending. This is the last one.
Yep.
Last one. So this is the cloud. This is the all three cloud also define that how to do the well-defined architecture or robust architecture. So here I have placed the link, and you can go with, and you can refer it. They also follow the same pillar. Google is only have a 4th pillar because they put the performance and cost optimization as a single pillar. Otherwise, they're following the same COPS ideology. So you can go and you can do the cloud specific, of your benchmarking your architecture. So that's it from my side, guys. Do you have any query? Let me know, so if I can answer.
I think we are good. We don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.